Hello, this is Kurt Barth with Brock Associates, bringing you the latest from the Illinois Soy Advisor Marketing Education Series. Today's presentation is Hedging Strategy 4, Advanced Option Strategies. We'd like to take a look at things that are a bit more complicated than we've covered in the past. We are also going to review one strategy at the end that we did talk about in Hedging Strategy 3. So without further ado, let's get going. As with the other episodes of this series, I want to stress that marketing education, we really feel it's very important. Brock Associates and Illinois Soybean Association have gotten together to hopefully help producers better understand marketing concepts, which is then going to drive better decision making and result in better marketing. Overwhelmingly, we hear from farmers that they want to make better marketing decisions, do better at their marketing. But getting from point A, wanting to do better marketing, to point B, having better results can sometimes be a bit of a torturous road. So hoping that through this education series, we give you some tools that you may not have had in the past, or help you make better use of some tools that you've been using. So today's presentation, we're going to cover 4 different strategies. First, a straddle, then a strangle, which can easily be confused. We'll try to give you a mental trick on how to remember the difference. A collar, which includes a floor or a ceiling, and that is a bit of a review from the last presentation that we did. And then we'll also talk about premium price enhancements to cash sales. So what's important in most of these strategies is to understand the concept of time decay in option value. An option's value is made up of 3 different components, the first of which is the intrinsic value. We're not going to talk about that too much today. That basically tells you how much it's in the money, meaning that if you own a $4 corn put and corn is at $3.75, well, then you have 25 cents of intrinsic value. But options also have time value because the market doesn't know which way things might go. And so even though corn is at, say, $3.70 today, a $3.50 put for December still has some value. That's because the market could fall below that price. That's what we call the time decay value of that option. Also, volatility gets involved. Clearly, at times of higher volatility, where the uncertainty is higher, sometimes these time values will increase. But over time, as we are so often reminded, most options expire worthless, and that's because that time value ekes away and eventually goes to nothing. At least this option may still have intrinsic value, but the time value goes to 0 as the option expires. So in looking at the first example, an option straddle, and I think the best way to think about a straddle versus a strangle is that a straddle straddles one price. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of a highway, straddling the yellow line. That yellow line is going to be the strike price that we're going to pick. Our right leg will be a put, and our left leg will be a call, and we're going to sell each of these. And I have to stress that because oftentimes producers are accustomed to buying puts to protect the floor, or buying calls to perhaps buy back cash sales in the market. But we're going to sell these. We're going to collect the premium. This strategy is usually done at or near the money, meaning that, for instance, today I'm doing this on the 23rd of August. Corn's right around $3.70. That would be at or near that price, the strike price, $3.70. Now, it does and can function as a hedge in either a stable or a rising market. We'll take a look at why that is. It also does have some limited downside protection, but not unlimited downside protection. So unlike, say, a futures hedge, where you know exactly what price you're going to get, or if you bought a put and you know exactly what your floor is, in this case, it, as they say, does function as a hedge in a stable or rising market, but not in a downtrending market. It's also usually delta neutral to start, and what we mean by that is that each of these options has roughly is going to move roughly the same amount with the futures market, because these are options on futures. So for instance, if the market moves up 10 cents, one of these options is going to lose value, one of them is going to gain value in a roughly equal amount at least to start. The further we get away from the strike price, the less delta neutral it gets. The reason that's important is because it allows for a lower margin to begin with, and of course also a much lower change or volatility in the position, so that you're not your risk of your margin call while still there is muted. So here's an example. And I have to stress here that since we're relatively close to the expiration of these, meaning we're within about about 2 months of expiration, the time value in this first example is not particularly great. And so you might look at it and say, well, that's okay, but it's not, a screaming deal, so to speak. But we want to familiarize you with the process, because these can be done at any time and on any crop year. So let's just say that today we sold the November 2019 870 call. We can get about 18.5 cents for that. We can sell the put for about 25.5 cents. So the total we collect flows into our account is 44 cents. So what this results in is a break even, so to speak, at 44 cents above and below this price. So that the break even on the high side is 9.14, break even on the low side is 8.26. But the important part is that we realize a $9.14 selling price for any expiration of soybeans over $8.70, as long as we make a cash sale along with that. So if we do the math, why is that? Well, we've collected 44 cents for this strategy. If soybeans, for instance, expires at $9, then the put at 870, of course, is worthless because beans are at $9. But the call still has 30 cents of value because it was an 870 call. We lose that 30 cents. But since we gained 44 cents to begin with, the net gain of the position is 14 cents, which we add to our $9 selling price, and we get $9.14. And that math works for any expiration: $8.71, $8.75, $9, $10, $11, you name it, whatever that price is, the gain or loss on that call and the combination of the cash sale gets you $9.14, no matter what. So if we look at a chart here and try to figure out exactly how this works, here's where the straddle price is going to be. Our strike price is at 870. And our break even is plus or minus 44 cents from that price. So the high break even is 9.14, the low break even at 8.26. Oftentimes we like to get these break evens at or near resistance and support. In light of the downtrend in the soybean market here recently, this example clearly we are not on the high break even side, not as high as we might like, but the low break even is right near that spike low, actually right at the close of that day at $8.26. So let's take a look at what happens if we don't expire above 870. What happens to our strategy? And here again, we've got our high and our low break even at 9.14 and 8.37. So let's imagine that we expire 20 cents lower at 8.50. How does the strategy then work? Well, here again, in this case, the call expires worthless because it was an 870 call, but the 870 put expires with 20 cents of value. And so essentially we have to give 20 cents back from the 44 that we originally got from selling the strategy. That gives us a net 24 cents yet. So added to the 850 selling price, we still get 874. So when we say it gives limited downside protection, in this example, we're getting about 20 to 25 cents. Actually, exactly would be 22 cents downside protection that would occur with an expiration at 848. So beyond that, we would get less than we would have had we just sold the soybeans at 870 on that particular day. So when we say we have limited downside, this is what we're talking about. The break even again really tells you if you had done nothing on that day as opposed to putting on this strategy, when would you be a loser, so to speak? And that the answer to that is at 8:37. But in this case, market goes down 20 cents, expires 20 cents lower. You still get 8.74, roughly the price that day had you sold the soybeans on that day. Second strategy is an option strangle, and here again we're going to sell options. But in this case, rather than selling them at the money, we're going to sell both of them out of the money. We're going to sell one out of the money put, and we're going to sell one out of the money call. Ordinarily, we like to do this kind of at the top and bottom of an expected trading range. What you're really doing here is just saying, I'm not sure today, tomorrow, the next day, next week, whether we're going up or whether we're going down. I just am pretty sure that we're not going to go above X or below X, and then put together a strategy to utilize that outlook. It is not a hedge. This is strictly income augmentation. We're going to add cents to bushels, be they sold or be they unsold. The position can be delta neutral to start. Generally speaking, you need to be trading not really halfway in between the put and the call, because the calls generally have a bit more premium in them. The reason for that is that there is unlimited upside, meaning that commodity can go to wherever. The soybeans go to $20, I suppose. In some scenarios, some year they could, but obviously in the case of a put, you can't go lower than zero. And so generally, when a delta neutral strategy will require the market to be a little bit higher than halfway between these two prices. So I'm going to use November 20 soybeans as an example, because again, we want to sell enough time value to make this strategy worthwhile. So the two prices I've selected here are 8.40 and 10.20. We can argue about whether or not 8.40 is adequately low or 10.20 is adequately high, but to familiarize you with the strategy, this is the example that we're going to use. So in this case, we would sell the 8.40 put. Right now, it's good for 16 cents. The November 20 call is, the November 20. All right, let's try that again. We're going to start out by selling the November 20 8.40 put for 16 cents. We're going to sell the November 20 10.20 call for 21 cents. We're going to collect 37 cents. So the delta on this is not quite neutral, but pretty close. If we look at the delta of the call, it's 27% positive, the put 21% negative. So the net delta to start is 6%. What does that mean? Well, that means that in theory and in practice for the most part, that the first 16 cents that this market moves, your margin requirement will move just 1 penny. Now, the closer we get to one of these strike prices, that delta is going to increase. But the point here is that for starters, it's fairly neutral, and so it is the volatility for margin is much muted compared to, say, buying or selling futures. So we realized 37 cents, and the idea here is that we're just going to collect 37 cents above the market for any expiration between $8.40 and $10.20. The idea here is that we want the put and the call to expire worthless. So for above 8.40, the put is worthless, as is the call, obviously, and below 10.20, same way. So any expiration between 8.40 and 10.20, we win. The break even is 37 cents above and below those prices. So that would be 8.03 on the downside, 10.57 on the high side, a full $2.50 spread, making us fairly comfortable that certainly a high probability that we're going to, at the very least, break even on this strategy. So looking at the chart, we're going to keep 37 cents within the strangle between 8.40 and 10.20. Break even is 37 cents outside of it. You can see that looking at the November 20 chart, both of these prices right now are well above and below where November 20 beans have traded. Now, granted, there's lots of corners to turn before that crop comes in. South American production and weather, U.S. planted acres next year, trade negotiations, et cetera, et cetera. One of the reasons why we set this boundary so wide, clearly much below and much above where this contract is traded. So what you'd like to do is make your high side break even, a level of sale that really that you can make yourself live with. And clearly in this case, the most that we can get is 1057, but that's pretty darn good. Meaning an expiration at pardon me, at 1020 would get you 1057, a pretty heady price. When strangling sold bushels, then of course we want to get these break evens very, very safe because we just really are trying to augment income and add to a sale, whether that's good sale, bad sale. In the case of strangling unsold bushels, as I said, you want to make yourself comfortable with the high side and get your low side break even safe. And what we mean by safe is at a level that we really don't feel that we can get below price wise. So again, at this stage of the game, feel pretty comfortable with 803 as a low price, and certainly would be very happy to take 1057 as a high price on the strangle. Now that we have probably made your head spin off and go into orbit with these last two strategies, let's take one look at one that's a bit more straightforward. The premium price, where we sell cash and also sell a call above the market. And of course, this is how premium price contracts are constructed by grain merchandisers as well. So we're going to sell cash grain and then pick a strike price above the current market, sell that call, add that premium to our sale, and then commit additional bushels should the market rally to that strike price. So, of course, it requires that you have additional bushels that you can sort of set on the side and keep in limbo over whatever period of time you need to wait for that call to expire. It is a good strategy for those who market using kind of a farm management approach. And by that, I mean, if today you said, you know what, if I could get $9 for my beans, I would take that price. Or if I get $9.25, I would take that price. Even if it rallies another 25, 50 cents past there, that's okay. If that's your approach, then this can be a good strategy for you. Also, a good way to kind of turn back the clock when we tell ourselves, gee whiz, I wish I'd have sold at $9, and now that we're at $8.70 or $8.65, it makes up for woulda, shoulda, coulda by allowing you to capture that price that perhaps you missed. So the downside, though, is that it limits the upside to whatever that strike price of your call might be. So we're going to use two examples, one using a March 2020 $9 soybean call, and another example using a November 2020 against next year's crop, a $10 call for 35 cents. How does this work? Well, let's look at the first one. So we've got beans from this year. Currently, as I do this recording, the price is at $8.70. So we sell cash beans at $8.70 plus or minus basis, but we also sell the March 20 call for 31 cents. We get that money. So now we have $9.01 for today's sale, $8.70 from futures, 31 cents from the option. But that does cap an additional amount of bushels off the March contract at $9. Now that's because if we were to rally to say $9.25, you would still sell your beans for $9.25, but you'd have a 25-cent liability against the $9 call. We're using that March contract just because we're so close to the November options now, just 2 months away from expiration, that there really isn't enough premium there to make a meaningful contribution. Those are only selling for about 11 cents today. So rather than do that, we try to do something meaningful, collect an extra 30 cents, get us back to $9, but in the process we commit to additional bushels, same number, at $9 off the March. Now, on the other hand, we can kind of do this across marketing years. If we say, well, not sure about the crop this year, not sure I'll have additional bushels to commit should that strike get hit, we can also use next year's calls to kind of do the same thing. So November 19 sale, again, at $8.70. But this time, we're going to sell the November 20 $10 call for 35 cents. So this again gets us over $9 for the beans we sell this year, $8.70 on the futures, 35 cents for the call premium, gets us $9.05 today. So the worst thing that happens in this strategy is that we rally next year, whether it's for whatever reason, and we're forced to commit that same number of bushels at $10. And I think most of us would agree that at this stage of the game, if your first sale of November 20 beans occurred at $10, that would be a pretty good thing. Looking at these two sales together, then the 905 today and the potential for a $10 later, again, the average would be 952.5. And again, I would argue that if you could in fact get 952.5 today for soybeans, you'd be very, very happy to take it. So much more straightforward than our first two examples. And finally, we'll take another look, as we did last week, at what we call a collar. I don't think we actually called it out by name last week, our last presentation, but it's where we buy a put and sell a call. And this is sort of comparable to a min-max cash contract. So we look at buying a $9 put for 30 cents. And you can see here our strike price, the put price is $9. That's where the floor is. And we're going to sell a 950 call for 11 cents. So our strike price ceiling is at 950. Results in a 19-cent cost for the strategy. So rather than just paying 30 cents for the put, we get 11 cents of it back. But then that gives us a true net ceiling here of 931. Not too far off the high that we've seen here over the summer. And sets a floor of 881. So, which is above support now. Clearly, the support is really around 854, 854.5, which is the bottom of that spike low back from the first part of August. So our floor is well above that support. Our ceiling of 931, still several cents above what I would call resistance now. 920 certainly seems as far as we might rally in the near term. So what this gets you by selling the call along with the put is a little higher floor and a pretty decent ceiling should we rally. So in summary, what we're really trying to do here is take advantage of option time value to either quasi-hedge, as we did with the straddle, where it does function as a hedge in a stable or rising market, but does give us limited downside protection, or just augment income with the strangles, where we sell a range and say, I think we'll be above this price and below that price, and collect something to augment sales, perhaps help augment basis. So selling calls, it can also improve the price of a current sale, as we did in the premium price contract, in return for committing to a potential future sale. And then, of course, buying a put and selling a higher call establishes something comparable to the min-max cash contracts that you're likely familiar with. So we need to point out that there is a risk of losses as well as profits when trading futures and options. Certainly, a market analysis here is not a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell any futures contract or other security. We are just trying to get you acquainted with the ways in which options can be used. You can probably see by what we've presented today that the potential choices are quite limitless between the different strike prices that are available and how you can combine them. Using options really is limited only by your own imagination and your risk profile. So we appreciate you listening today to not only this, but the other presentations that Jason and myself have put together. If you have further questions, you can contact Jason here through his email or give him a call at 217-430-1981. Thanks again for listening.